Before I jump into some questions, I got to tell you, I think Angeline did not get a fair shake,
Oh, thank you, Joey.
and I think that was I was like hypnotized by that show, and
It's one of my favorite things I've ever worked on, despite it not getting its fair shake. I think it was, for me, one of the most challenging, really cool prosthetic shows of my career. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
yeah, that's just thinking about the prosthetics of that. I was like, I don't think I've seen prosthetics look like that, and due to those circumstances, so I feel like that was
Due to those circumstances, indeed, yeah, that was the challenge there for sure. And then you also have people that are aging at the same time, but naturally along with. So it was,
hmm
it was interesting. But I had a great time on that.
yeah, good show. Um, Sympathizer. I did not know what the show really was, and I jumped in, and dear God, I should have watched a trailer or something, but I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
Um, what a wild ride the show is. I like me some questioning if the narrator is good. Feel like I did a lot of learning with the show. I really dig it.
Yeah, you kind of learn with everybody along the way, right? It's just we're all in it together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean this sort of in like a joking manner, but not really. I'm kind of serious, but I mean, I wanted to know, I think it's episode 3 where we see all four Robert Downey Jr.'s.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, I feel like if I was you, I feel like I would be terrified for that
No.
because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean like everybody kind of looks like Robert Downey Jr., but obviously has very distinct features. I guess, do you adjust anything when they're all sitting side by side?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, yeah, the most terrifying day for sure. In fact, I think after that is when I kind of like, really backed off and was like, okay, everyone's good now, right? Like, I can leave. Like, this
Yeah.
is all gonna just work now because, look, it's daunting enough to create one individual character on somebody that needs to look like someone else and be that.
hmm
Then it's even more daunting when you have to do multiple of them. But then that third level of difficulty is when then they're all at a table together talking with each other, and you have that moment. So yeah, it was kind of like challenge upon challenge upon challenge.
Was that filmed in one day?
Multiple,
Okay.
but
Jesus.
yeah, no, we I mean it's a big turnover for him, so it's
hmm
multiple days to get him through all of those. But to answer your question specifically, no, nothing changes about
Yeah.
the looks. They're still the same looks. It's just, I, look, from the very beginning, there's parameters about this work that I know, right? I know that I have limited time. I don't have 5 hours every single day to put Robert through full coverage prosthetics where he's got a neck and cheeks and forehead, and like you can really make somebody look like anything you want, right? But with this, it's like, no, you don't have that much time. These have to be kind of very quick looks, but they have to be very impactful. And so right out of the gate, I mean, I remember like raising this red flag of, they're all going to kind of have an essence of Robert here. There's my hands are tied a little bit. I can't completely change that. And
hmm
and and as I understood the story and what was happening and what was being revealed, I then could lean into that a little bit and go, oh, okay, that's all right. We can kind of have a little bit of a flow here, so that at the end of the series you can say, oh, I see why everyone kind of looks somewhat similar and why these characters are what they are. And so that's one thing that I had a little bit of a sigh of relief on, that I could
Yeah.
kind of lean into a little bit. But aside from that, it's really just trying my best to create individual characters that have very distinct features and qualities and silhouettes about them that feel like they are different people. And I have to
hmm
credit Robert to so much of that, is that Robert's bringing a new person to each one of those characters in such a great way. If that was someone else that wasn't able to kind of embody these different characters in that way, it could fall flat. But the professor is such a night and day difference from Claude, for example, that
Yeah.
he makes that jump work really well.
I feel like I haven't heard anyone in makeup use the word silhouette before. Like, I feel like we're so used to hearing that in terms of
Costuming or
costumes, because
yeah.
I'm like a sucker to talk to costume designers, and I feel like I've never heard. I feel like a lot of times, especially with watching this show, I kept wondering when I was thinking in the mindset of prosthetics, I kept wondering about stuff that we don't see because they're
Mm,
covered in clothes.
yeah,
And I kind of like that mystery as a viewer because it all leads to like a building block of character for Robert Downey Jr. So
100%.
I feel like that's a little bit of a mystery from myself, I guess.
Well,
Um,
you're alluding to something that is happening there, right? And this is, so Danny Glicker,
mhm,
speaking of Angeline, that's where we met,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then we were on this, and so we did talk about changing some body proportional stuff. So Professor, for example,
mm,
does have like undersuit, belly and kind of little man boobage and love handle going into thigh. He's got like this little, you know, um, undersuit structural sculpted thing that's going on
yeah,
there. Claude has bigger biceps and shoulder
hmm.
to kind of make him a little bit more muscular. There are little things that are going on with some of these characters to kind of just help tweak some stuff. So you were right in your assumption.
Because I kept thinking about posture a lot because I felt
Yeah,
like the part where I think Claude comes out and he's like, "Oh, I'm a gay guy," and he's walking a dog. Like
right.
I kept thinking about, I was like, I wonder how Claude, not just putting an outfit on, but I mean, I kept thinking about the costume he puts on, but I kept thinking of like in that scene to the first scene that where we meet him, and it was kind of like
Hmm.
a fun way of thinking about how a character, an actor builds a character with a costume
Hmm.
and the makeup that we don't see. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
my
huge part of it. I
yeah.
mean, I love when you have somebody, like a Robert who's leaning heavily into that, right? I mean, he's not feeling like these things are hindrances. He's looking at
Oh
them as
yeah.
tools, right? He's looking at them as something to like really, which I love. I mean, that's what a good character actor would be
Hmm.
doing, in my opinion. Which apparently is not it's like a frowned upon term these days, character actor. But anyhow, I think
Gotcha.
it's great. I love that.
I was literally just wearing a shirt earlier that says "Protect Character Actresses." That's
Oh
funny.
wow, there you go.
That's fun. That's funny. So before I want to talk about the specific gentleman that he plays, I guess I wanted to know from, I don't say like where your brain starts with these. Like, do you talk to Park Chan Wook? Do you speak initially with Robert Downey Jr. about physicality and stuff like that? I'm very curious about how a prosthetics makeup designer begins conversations and builds outward.
Mm,
And is that process the same for, I mean, I guess it's fortunate that you have one actor doing all of it, but I guess is the approach similar from character to character despite having one actor playing everybody?
mm. Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, the approach would actually be quite similar and the same if they were all different actors.
Hmm.
Um, the only thing that really changes is making sure that I don't repeat myself. So making sure that
Okay.
something that I'm doing sculpturally is incredibly bespoke for each of these characters. I don't want to all of a sudden go, oh wow, I'm actually doing a really similar nose that I just did on Claude, so I need to make sure that I'm going in a different direction. So my
Hmm.
mind is working differently in that sense, that I'm making sure that everything is very different and unique for each of those characters. Um, but it starts with conversations with Park and Robert. Those two
Hmm.
really were the big voices in the room at the moment of just what what is the backstory. And not, and when I say backstory, I don't even mean backstory script wise. I just mean backstory that maybe they just have in their own head of, you
Hmm.
know, I feel like this guy is a war vet and he has this hand injury and I want him to really play into this and it's got burn
Okay.
scarring and so these conversations happen and as they're happening, I'm just kind of a sponge. I'm just absorbing all of these things. This is actually before I read script
Hmm.
or read book or get into any of that. I almost want a clean slate, right? I almost want none of that to influence me. I only want that discussion between Robert, showrunners, producers, Park,
Sure.
to really be the thing that feeds me. And then
Hmm.
when I sit down and I start sculpting, that's playing in the back of my mind, and then I can start to visualize what I think these characters actually look like. And that process is kind of organic. I can't say that I have something in my mind where I'm like, oh, I want this to look exactly like this, and that's what I'm emulating. It's more about as I start sculpting, I've got the story in my head, so I'm like, okay, so Claude has got a checkered past. Maybe he's kind of a tough dude, so
Yeah.
we're gonna make him look like he's got a broken nose that's being reset a couple times. It's a little broader. It's got this going on. He's a little tougher, so he's got kind of a more square jaw. He's got a cauliflower ear. Maybe
Hmm.
let's play with a scar here or there. So, and also it's a lot of playing. It's like trying stuff and then looking at it and going, no, that doesn't work at all. I'm going to scrap that and I'm going to try something else. And that's how I kind of approached each of those characters, was just kind of playing with what I felt worked until it resonated with me as that character.
Hmm. That's very. I mean, I'm a theater boy, so I think that that's very not unlike hearing an actor build a character. That's actually really cool that you say that. That's cool. Um, I want to ask about Professor Hammer. I think visually, out of the four characters that Robert plays, when I first saw pictures of the show, I was like, who is this? Who
He's
is
my
this
favorite.
man? He's like, there's a little bit of Alan Arkin in there, a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
that I love. It really, like the picture that I just kept staring at. Um, I think he's like sitting there. It looks like he's almost like meditating. I think
Uh-huh.
his
With the belly and the
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I that was the I think that's the first image of the show that I came across, and it was just like I was like, what is the scar about? There's the nose, the I think his like teeth are a little bit
Yeah.
stained. I think from a visual standpoint, he was my favorite. Maybe because I think that's the least that looks like Robert Downey Jr.
Hmm.
I guess I just tell me all about him because I was so drawn into him, and anything that he does with his voice on top of it is sort of like
Oh,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, look, they're all special for their own reasons, but Professor just kind of like itched a scratch for me that I really loved.
Yeah.
So we knew that we wanted to lean into the fact that Robert had shaved his head for this, which is pretty cool because it meant that we didn't have to bald cap him every day, and
Ah. Okay.
and he wanted to basically have as little time in the chair as possible.
Hmm.
Who wants to be sitting there for 4 hours? So he was like, I'm going to shave my head, and that way you have a blank canvas and you can do whatever you want. And we thought, well, we should at least utilize that for one of the characters and actually have them be bald.
Yeah.
And so, as this character started to develop, we thought about things that we wanted to see here. And going back to what you said earlier about the silhouette, silhouette's important to me because it's for me it's the first thing that resonates with you, whether
Hmm.
it's subconscious or not. It's like is it a long shape? Is it a round shape? Is
Hmm.
it square? And these can be much more subtle when we're talking about a prosthetic makeup than if we're talking about something else like a creature suit or wardrobe, like you had mentioned. But
Hmm.
for me, Professor is round. Everything
Hmm. Yeah.
about him is more bubbly and more round than, for example, the much more angular notes of our like auteur character, our director, right?
Hmm.
So he's a little bit more chiseled in many ways. So I played into that with the Professor in terms of like his nose, for example. I wanted it to feel much rounder. I
Yeah.
wanted him to have more of a bulbous tip. I wanted his nostrils to come out further so that everything felt wider. I wanted his cheeks to be a little bit fuller. I wanted him to have these kind of elongated earlobes. Everything just kind of felt like that was where the mind was, uh, and we wanted to age him a little bit too, which I love. I like old
Hmm.
age stuff that appeals to me. So when Director Park was like, let's push his age a little bit, that was exciting for me, so that we could give him eye bags and kind of give him
Hmm.
jowls. Um, so we kind of go through this whole thing, and I often sculpt hair when I'm doing this just to kind of get
Okay.
an idea of what things might look like. And I had kind of a fuller mustache on him, And director Park was like, I think we should try something else with that mustache. I want him to have a mustache, but let's not do that. And so I instantly kind of like, we leaned into this John Waters, like,
Yes.
thin mustache. And then all of a sudden, once I don't remember if it was director Parker or if it was myself, I don't remember who said John Waters, but once it was said, I was like, oh, now I really want to lean into John Waters for certain elements of this. Uh, and so until the makeup test, I had not heard really what Robert was thinking about with voice or character or
Yeah.
the way he was going to carry himself. And so when that first makeup test happened, I love that you bring up the professor because he's the one that he's the only one that I actually changed. Um,
Oh, okay.
he he started kind of holding his mouth in a very particular way, especially with his teeth and his kind of snaggle tooth that he had going on. And everything started to become this character. And I was like, oh, I want to play into that. I want to make his jowls work with that expression and kind of allow him to hold his
Mm-hmm.
mouth in this kind of really wonderful way. And so I resculpted that. And director Park had actually, we had a little sidebar conversation about this where he was like, I really want this to feel even a little more old and pulled down. And then it allowed me to kind of make it work structurally with Robert and the expressions that he was pulling even more. So yeah, in terms of the character, Robert helped me understand more of what that character needed to be after that makeup test. With also, I'm sure some of the stuff that I had done helped Robert know where he was going.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of help each other there, right? There's this yin yang of understanding what he's bringing to the table, what I brought to the table. He can feed off me, and then I can feed off him, and then we can dial everything in and find,
Mm.
the final look.
Man, you say I kind of want to go back and watch all of his scenes now just to think of John Waters. I love John Waters, but just because I remember the first time that Robert opens his mouth and I was like, "What is that voice?" And
Yeah,
it's sort of like anytime that the professor comes on screen, I was like, I don't know what he's gonna do. Sort of the unpredictable nature of what John Waters is like, or what his films represent. That's actually really funny.
yeah.
Um,
Some of his little comments and yeah,
yeah,
he's great.
yeah, there's the also with his belly. I love I think in that shot that I was originally talking about, the way that the belly sort of goes like this, like
Mm.
it's round, but the way that he's sitting, they're sort of just like it's just spilling over, just
Little compression. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, that was really cool. Um, Sort of on the opposite side of the professor, Ned is
Mm.
sort of like reminds me a little bit of like my dad. He reminds me of like the nicest politician you never want to meet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit of like a there's like character wise, there's like a little bit of Mitt Romney in there. There's
Mm.
the teeth. I was obsessed with like the chiclet teeth. I guess since I guess probably out of the four characters visually, I think Ned is the the most opposite of the professor.
Sure.
Very all American looking um I guess maybe yeah, so what can you tell me about some inspiration with him?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you say like the references that you make there too. It's like it's funny. We think of like this very um like toxic masculinity, like this very like unbelievably stoic, firm, strict, like Republican kind of vibe
Mhm.
in this individual, right? And um, that starts to paint a picture visually, I think, for everybody. You
Yeah.
just start to get an idea in your head of what that looks like, and I think his, you know, unbelievably clean cut. Like, there's no other direction for his hair to go, right? Like, his hair is just that. It's like what that's going to look like. I felt like I wanted him to have this almost underbitten, like kind of large chin, lower lip, like very pronounced, very strong jawline.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he didn't actually go through many changes at all. I think actually first iteration of his sculptural like look, everybody was like, yeah, that's a congressman. That's who we want here. One thing that was fun about him, we have contact lenses at varying characters, uh, and Ned's got almost black. Um,
Oh
you know,
God.
Robert was like, I want him to almost feel like he has no soul. and he was talking about playing the character that way, and when he said that, I was like, well, why don't we make it look like you have no soul by giving your eyes such a dark brown that they almost just feel like black holes. And he was like, yes, let's do that.
Oh,
Let's play with that. And
that's
so they are,
that's
yeah, they're very
horrifying. Jesus
very
Christ.
very dark brown eyes, so that, you know, they're not black, but they have a sinister feel to them that really kind of shift that character. I mean, if you looked at that character and he had, you know, very kind of bright, if he had Claude's eyes, for example, he would be a completely different look. I mean,
Oh
his whole
yeah.
character would be different. And so the fact that he's got these kind of soulless eyes just plays into that so well. So I thought it was a great little like moment between us. I mean, me and Robert had many conversations like this where we would just spitball something and go, okay, yeah, let's try that. And
Mhm.
that was one of them, of let's make him soulless with his eyes.
God. I like that comparison between him and Claude because since Claude is the first one that we meet, we have like the most, I guess, time in our brain to think about him. And I feel like
Hmm.
the I kept, even though his like skin is like Claude's skin is like a little bit blotchy and
Yeah, freckly and
yeah, yeah, there's something about like from here all the way up, it gives me this like blondish, pinkish tone, whether I was just like, oh, he probably should have worn a hat a lot more in his life.
yeah,
And
skin
sort
cancer might have got to him a
oh
couple
God.
times.
Yeah. So sort of to think about just the eyes on Ned. Good God. I feel like somewhere like the first time I saw him, I was like, oh, Bryan Cranston's gonna watch this and be pissed that he wasn't up for that part. He's gonna be so
Interesting.
mad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I guess just one last question before I let you go. Is there anything prosthetics wise that necessarily like we as an audience don't clock right away that you're like really gratified that we don't notice? Like
Hmm.
I think maybe visually it may seem that like Nico is like the most similar to what Robert Downey Jr. kind of looks like in real life, I
Yeah,
guess.
100%. Yeah.
I guess is there maybe something on him that you could tell me about, or maybe something on, him that like no one has really asked you about, like, is that prosthetic or not? That like maybe you're super gratified that no one has picked up on yet.
Yeah, well, it's cool that you say that because for me, the thing that I do get gratification out of is when the work that I do goes unnoticed.
Right.
Like I love the fact that when we do something, it's like so seamless and gets incorporated into the story so well that you're just like, oh, I had no idea. As opposed to, you know, you're working on a creature movie and obviously we've made a creature suit and it's in your face and it's big and it's bold, and I prefer this type of work for that reason. I kind of love that idea of like sliding it under the radar and then having people go like, oh my god, I had no idea that that person had a nose on the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, I think that obviously he has a nose on. Speaking of things that are obvious,
Mm-hmm.
um, but he has jaw pieces, for example, that I don't think necessarily you'd know
Okay.
on right and left side that kind of change the shape of his overall jawline. So Claude actually has a very similar change to him. It's just a different proportional shift from his jawline.
Mm-hmm.
But Nico has that as well. He has this nice little kind of chiseled quality
Yeah.
to the back of his jaw that Robert just doesn't have. Robert's jaw kind of falls into his neck a little bit more on the sides here, and so we just wanted to bump that up and create a little bit more of a squareness from him head
Mm-hmm.
on. And that's a piece that, for example, I think that most people would go, well, yeah, he has a nose on and that's it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he has a nose on, he has this on, he has a mole,
Yeah.
he's got a wonderful lace chest hair piece that we felt was important. Um, yeah, so all the characters probably have one or two pieces that you might not be able to clock, and I think that that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. You know, there's some stuff that obviously feels like a big change and you know that they're there, and then I think there's a couple other things that maybe just get snuck in there where you go, oh, I didn't actually know that that was even a piece, that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
Robert, that, you know, these little things help kind of shift not just those individual characters, but help shift them apart from one another, kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about like the way that his jaw goes. I think I wrote down somewhere like diamond question mark. Um
Mm,
and
interesting.
then and then
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I
Sorry.
think I used the word chiseled, so that's
Mm-hmm.
that's right. Yeah, no, I think that that's a good call.
And I think I wrote somewhere shag carpet chest hair question mark. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Um, well, thank you so much for your time, Vincent. I feel like I don't think I know a lot of makeup designers going into a show, but since I was such a fan of Angeline, that like when I found out that you were a part of it, I was super excited, and I'm really rooting for this show. The show really took me by surprise across the board with a lot of things, and there's a lot of really
Hmm.
thrilling aspects to it. And I think what you did here is sort of just like what we all love in terms of like character building and everything. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Joey. That means a
Yeah,
lot to me. I really appreciate it.
yeah. All right. Well, stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and good luck to you this season.
Thanks. You
All
too.
right. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.